Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to The Crawl, the show where we break down the future of search, brand authority, and everything else AI is rewriting about digital marketing. I'm Tristan Harris, your host, and today we're going to be discussing the basics of AI. So, as we learned in our previous episode, AI is not necessarily a new concept, but it is, however, ever changing. So, today we're going back to the basics and touching on what people should know about AI, but somehow still don't, with our guest, Thiago Ferreira. Tiago is a proud IE Business School MBA alum, where he served as president of the school's LGBTQ plus club in Madrid, and currently teaches executive MBA students as an adjunct professor. He spent nearly a decade learning international business development initiatives across the US, Canada, Spain, and Portugal. The international experience shaped his global perspective and people-first approach to the technology. He also supports the next generation of leaders through his volunteer work with the Junior Achievement of Greater Miami, where he teaches entrepreneurship and real-world skills in local classrooms. So today, Tiago works with companies across the U.S. to design practical AI systems that reduce busy work and help teams do what they do best. He's trained hundreds of professionals through workshops, including his signature AI training Bootcamp, and also serves as Chief AI Officer of the Revaya Hospitality Group, focused on AI-powered solutions for the events and hospitalities industry. So everyone, please welcome Tiago to the show. So Tiago, how are you doing today?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great and excited to be here.
Awesome. I always ask guests how it feels to have kind of their background and achievements read off to them.
It's interesting. It's humbling to hear it back for sure. Sometimes I do hear somebody like yourself read it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that, didn't I? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have done a lot of things. That's awesome. To start off, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your background with AI?
Absolutely. So I am the founder and CEO of Elevate AI Consulting, which is a boutique AI consulting firm based in Miami, Florida. And we do a few different things. On one hand, it's really about AI education. So as you mentioned, we do have our signature AI training bootcamp, which is really our number one product. And we do a lot of corporate trainings. As you also mentioned, I mean, a lot of high schools and colleges and doing just AI education overall. And on the other hand, we do all the AI buzzword bingo words that you hear all the time now, right? So answer engine optimization and AI agents and automations, and really just working with the leadership of companies in order to set AI strategy for the future and come up with those custom solutions.
Oh, I assume you kind of run the gamut on, AI agents can do almost anything. So when you're doing consulting and going into a lot of these companies, I imagine that it kind of runs the gamut across every industry, every kind of potential use case.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm seeing all kinds of industries reaching out to me. I get a lot of questions usually, what is our industry focus? And we usually work industry exclusive. So once we have a really good client, let's say in health insurance or automotive or whatever that industry happens to be, we're usually working exclusively with that company and not any of their competitors. That way we can ensure that we're giving them the best service and unique solutions that their competitors can't copy. And it's been, as you mentioned, across every industry, right? Because AI, as we know, is touching every part of our lives. And so there's not one industry out there that can ignore the current trend. So I'm really seeing clients and requests really from all industries and across the entire country as well.
So when you're talking to a new potential client or pretty much anybody about AI, what do they usually get wrong right out the gate?
So the number one thing that is a challenge, I think, not just for myself, but for other AI consultants out there, it's actually the fact that AI is so deceivingly easy to use, right? Anybody can get on ChatGPT and ask a vague question and get a vague answer, as we know. And many people think that that's the game. That's how you use AI. And they haven't realized that it actually does require training. It does require those power skills. And it does require knowledge in order to actually get the most out of your interactions with AI. So that's really the thing that most companies get wrong, is the lack of understanding that training is actually wanted and needed by their employees if they actually want to see some ROI from their AI investments.
That's a really good point. You can, build a better mousetrap, so to speak, or you could build an entire suite of tools. But if people don't really understand not just how to use it, but why and what the outcomes should be, you get into a position where it's almost, like the one-eyed leading the blind, which is never where you really want to be.
What I'm seeing out there a lot is exactly that, right? People and companies are spending a lot on these big AI projects and then forgetting the basics of training, as I just mentioned. And the other trend that really has a lot to do with what you just mentioned is really that the leadership of these companies have not themselves received proper training a lot of times, but they're under pressure to do AI, right? And so they're pushing all that pressure down the line to their directors and VPs and senior managers and etc. And then those people are putting the pressure on their employees down the line as well. But nobody really has a clear vision of what is actually possible to do. But even these senior leaders and C-suite executives have maybe not necessarily had the best training or really don't have a clear big picture idea of what AI can actually do for their business, but they're still passing down all of this pressure to their VPs and senior managers and etc. And so that is one of the big things I think that we need to overcome in 2026 is just people being open to actually receiving training and giving trainings that are hands-on and actually actionable to their entire companies in order to ensure that these AI investments that companies are making actually do have some ROI at the end.
That's something I've heard from some peers in my industry and some people I've worked with over the years, is there's a lot of pressure to adopt AI, but there's not a lot of here's specifically what we want the outcome to be. It's just run with it and see what we can do kind of deal. And I think that does stem from some lack of understanding from the high level on what's possible. I think that's a very pertinent point to make is most people don't know what's possible. Most people don't know how to properly adopt this tool since it is so new, right? It's not something we've been using since high school. It's something that is so new that people need to be able to kind of learn how to work with the new technology, and that there's always that kind of learning curve when it comes to anything new. And I think that's what we're seeing across a lot of companies is everybody's running, but nobody knows if they're even on the right track kind of deal. So I think that's
100%. It's almost a game of
definitely
hot potato. You know what I mean? Where the leaders get this pressure, they're not sure, they're not exactly sure what to do with it, right? So they pass it down to their VPs. Hey, we need to do some AI, and the VPs don't know what to do with it, so they pass the hot potato on to the senior managers and say, hey, get your team doing some AI. And nobody is quite clear on what that really means, right? And as we mentioned, it's deceivingly easy to use ChatGPT and all these other tools. And so everybody ends up thinking that they're doing AI by just asking ChatGPT some questions without realizing all the amazing things that are actually possible to build nowadays with AI, right?
Yeah, and I think that's part of why we've seen such a rise in AI agents being created for specific use cases, is to kind of clear up that having to figure it out yourself and just going to ChatGPT. It's finding a way to kind of build that out for specific problems that a lot of people in a lot of industries have, and then kind of roll those out and build it up from there.
Correct. And that's what I see. That is one of the trends that I've been seeing at most companies, right? What we see in the news and a lot of these clickbait articles, right? Talking about all these big companies letting go of thousands of employees and jobs ceasing to exist and this and that. The reality that I'm seeing actually in most companies, right? Most companies that are not Google or Amazon or one of the big ones that are always on the news, is exactly what you're saying. These agents are being developed in order to automate tasks, right? We're automating tasks. We're not automating jobs. And hopefully what comes out of that is that the people who actually have those jobs then have more time to actually do the marketing, right? Do the sales, do the human connection things that actually bring value to the company, and leave those admin repetitive tasks that nobody likes to do to those AI agents. And so that is actually, I think, a really great revolution, but it takes some changing of your framing of your mind, right, on what AI actually is and what it can do for your business in order to get there.
Yeah, and I think this leads into uh, kind of a basic aspect of AI that a lot of people don't really know. And that's what is the difference between things like automation, machine learning, and generative AI, and why does the distinction between them matter?
Yeah, it is actually really important, especially for business leaders, to understand those differences, right? It goes back to what we were just saying, the pressure of doing AI, but without understanding some of the fundamentals. So, but it is actually very easy to learn and understand it, right? If you think of generative AI, the answer is right there on the name, right? It is generating things for you. It is generating answers, generating texts. That is what most people are using right now with ChatGPT and Gemini and all of these different tools. But that's really level zero, as we mentioned, right? It's easy to use. Everybody has access to it. That will not give your business any kind of competitive advantage because everybody has access to the latest models now. It is table stakes. So when you start talking about automations and agents, those are the things that really can provide businesses with a competitive advantage if they're applied correctly, if leaders actually understands the difference between generative AI, which is just generating, as we said, answers and content for you, versus applied AI systems where you can create automations and agents and things like that. And therefore being able to bring some actual benefits to your business by utilizing every type of AI in its proper way and having your employees know how to use it as well.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So let's go ahead and dive into what you do with Elevate AI Consulting. So, what kind of businesses do you usually see ask for your AI bootcamp? Is it smaller mom and pops? Is it larger enterprises? Is it kind of run of the mill, anybody out there kind of deal?
It has been a mix. I've had a few Fortune 500 companies have me come in and train their entire marketing department, for example. In the AI training bootcamp, one of the things that we do is that every person that attends the bootcamp walks out of it having actually built something. So there's a lot of focus on the hands-on, actually seeing what AI can do beyond ChatGPT and building something for yourself, right? And so I usually have a limit of 15 people max at the boot camp so that I can give everybody the proper attention and support that they need to build those things. And so when it's a Fortune 500 company, for example, I usually split the boot camp into 4, 5, 6 different sessions, right? So we can train entire departments properly. And I also have some small businesses. I've had small businesses with between 10 and 20 employees also participate in the boot camp. And then in that case, we're training the entire company at once, which I think is also a really fun thing to do because everybody gets a little bit more visibility into what everybody else is building and can also use the tools that their teammates are building during the boot camp, right? So really the focus there is the immediate ROI. You come to the boot camp, everybody actually builds something that they can start using the very next day at their jobs. And you see the immediate ROI from the efficiency that comes from that within the teams that get trained.
It's really cool. So, uh, to understand this, you kind of go in and you work with their team, and with each individual person, you help them build some way to automate some part of their job to help them save time and become more efficient. That's
Correct.
really cool.
Yeah, correct. And the reason I wanted to do it that way is because, as you've seen, the conversation around AI has really shifted over the last few months. Companies are now really looking for that return on investment that we've been promised, right? And all those efficiencies that we were promised from the beginning when ChatGPT was launched. Now, managers and business leaders are asking for the receipts on that, right? Like, where is my return? Where are my efficiencies? And so that is why I came up with that bootcamp format where during the first day of the bootcamp, we go through all of the fundamentals, prompting, different AI tools beyond just ChatGPT that are out there, so that when we come into day two of the bootcamp, every person that has attended has an idea of things that they can build that will help them make their jobs more efficient. And so we spent the second day of the bootcamp as a group, working together, everybody helping each other, testing out different tools, and actually walking out of it feeling really good about themselves. At the end of the bootcamp, we have a final showdown session where everybody gets to present the solution that they built for themselves. And it's really amazing to see the things that people can build within just a couple of hours in a boot camp, right? That can really save them hours weekly in their jobs. And what people don't realize is that they walk out of it there being developers themselves, right? An AI developer, but still developing products, having developed an app, having created an automation or something like that. It just makes people feel really good, and they leave the boot camp feeling really inspired by what AI can actually do, versus usually when they walk in, they're feeling a little bit scared for their jobs and things like that, right? So it's a mindset shift that happens in those 2 days of the boot camp.
Yeah, so this is something you said reminds me of our guest last week, a gentleman named H.P. Newquist, who
Mm-hmm.
kind of is like really big on the history of AI and has been, wrote the actual literal book on the history of AI, right? And something he talked about is ties back into your point about now leadership is asking for receipts. So something he said is when ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude and all these came out, there was a big push, marketing push of this will save you money, automate everything. You
Yeah.
don't have to worry about anything, and we saw that that messaging get very quickly adopted by businesses. And I forget the actual business. It might have been Twitter, or I guess X nowadays. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
I'll ever call it X. I think I'll always call it Twitter. But
Twitter for life.
Twitter for life. But they laid off a bunch of developers, and then fast forward 3 months, they had hired a lot of them back because they realized, okay, we may have been sold a bit of a dream. I don't think we can really automate everybody's jobs away. And I think that is kind of coming back in that search for that kind of like request for ROI on what we're actually using AI for. Is the honeymoon phase is kind of over, right? And now it's time to figure out, like, okay, how is this actually being utilized, and how is this going to be useful for our company going forward? It's certainly something we've seen here. We have I personally have somebody on my team. His name's Jake, who is really passionate about utilizing AI to help streamline some areas of his work and help kind of provide better reach. And he builds tools for our customers and things along those lines. And it's very clear with something like that to see, hey, this is awesome. This is, really, really driving a lot of business for us. It's helping us, become more efficient. It's helping him, reclaim some of his time to focus on, higher level tasks. And then at the same time, there's areas where it's almost invisible, where it's still very helpful, but it's kind of behind the scenes, right? Like utilizing to help with project workflows and things along those lines are less in your face, but they're still very valuable, and they're helping in a lot of areas. So when it comes to kind of showcasing what people have built, that's a really cool idea. And I think it's something I'm going to, take to heart with my department and see,
Mhm.
like, okay, let's build some stuff and let's talk about it and show it off to each other and see, what we can do. And I think you're right. That does really empower people to feel good about what they've done, to feel more comfortable with the technology, and also to keep utilizing it in the future, because they tear down that initial, barrier of, this is difficult. I don't really know it.
Mhm.
I don't know what to do. And once you get past that, things become a lot more exciting and a lot more adoptable.
Yeah. So, um, what I'm seeing a lot when I walk into these companies, and the trend that's really out there, is that people are afraid, right? We see all the news articles about companies looking to automate jobs away or reduce workforce. So a lot of times people look at me or my team and think, oh, these people are here to learn everything that I do so that they can automate my job away and I'm not going to have a job tomorrow. And once they realize that that's actually not the case, we're there for the boot camp so that they can get hands-on and really learn how to build something. That is when the mindset shift happens, and people really feel loyalty as well to their managers and their companies, right? When they see, hey, this is actually a company that is investing in me, that is upskilling me, that is not just trying to reverse engineer how I do my job, but is actually investing in my education and my upskilling. Then you create real employee loyalty, you create excitement within the company about AI initiatives, and you really remove those obstacles that a lot of employees usually put on when they are afraid. And you see that mindset shifts really happen within the company.
That's it's going to be so important for people moving forward to figure out how to adopt this technology for their own use, whether it's just a quality of life thing, like how many more hours in a day can I gain by utilizing this to help in areas of my personal life as well as professional, right? And how much more reach does that give me to grow in my career? And I think that that's something that people are definitely afraid of, right? They're afraid of losing their job to this. They're afraid of not being able to kind of learn how to use it and use it effectively. And I think that people are overestimating how difficult it is, and they're underestimating their own ability, right? I certainly would not say I am a coder or a developer by any means. Like, I wrote a Python scraper once 15 years ago, and I doubt I could do it again. But I use Claude to create a lot of really cool, basic stuff that I utilize quite a bit. Um, and as a way to help visualize data and make it interactable and things along those lines. So it's certainly not something that people should feel intimidated by. And we don't know what AI's final form will be in the workplace, right? I think everybody's trying to figure that out and trying to build ways to utilize it, such as
Yeah.
agentic tools to help with certain specific things. But I think the big takeaway from this portion of the discussion is don't be afraid to try. Chat GPT is the tip of the iceberg, but things like Claude are easy to use and they'll do it for you. You just tell them what you need. And I think that once people get past some of that fear, then yeah, it can definitely be a very powerful tool.
I see people building really fun stuff even for their personal lives, right? And people haven't realized, as we were mentioning before, you really can build an app or a website, launch a business within a couple of minutes by using AI. And so I was going to give just a fun example of something that people can automate in their personal lives, right? So I have a very good friend that has kids, as I'm sure many of your listeners do. And so she took the time to write an app for her family where she automates the chores for her kids in order that they can get paid their allowance at the end of the week. So the kids have to go in and you made the bed, you get 5 points. You took out the trash, you get 7 points, or whatever the case may be. And at the end of the week, they got to have 100 points to get $20 or whatever their allowance is, right? And so it's small creative things like that that people out there are doing for their personal lives and for work that they never even imagined was possible. But the reality is that nowadays, if you have an idea, you can build it, and that is the revolution that I'm seeing out there.
That's awesome. That's a good idea. There's a slight fear that kids are crafty and they'll find a way to game that system to kind of break it and end up with like 1,000 points. But
Sure, but that's what kids do, right? That's their job to
yeah,
do, and and that's what makes it fun, probably.
and they learned something through the process too, which is cool.
Ex- Exactly.
So my next question kind of ties into that. Where does AI genuinely save people time, and where does it quietly create more work for people?
Yeah, so once you actually understand how to use AI, it can really save you a lot of time in your personal life and work life as well, right? I think especially once you realize that proper prompting will actually give you much better answers than if you just let ChatGPT assume things, then you really start to realize that you can do a lot more things than just refine an email or help you write a document, right? Or spell check something. When you really start to apply it to your daily tasks and go beyond ChatGPT and using it for things like I mentioned, the app that my friend created, or in one of my boot camps, one of the team members that was there actually created a prompt library app so that their entire team could upload their awesome prompts that they were using that worked really well and share it amongst the entire team. So those are the things that can really save people a lot of time and make it more efficient. Is really applying it and going beyond the ChatGPT usage. Where it can really have the opposite effect is when you actually trust it a little bit more than you should, and you're not getting real answers, right? So I was reading actually an article yesterday about a guy who ChatGPT managed to convince that he had come up with this amazing new mathematical formula that no one had discovered before. And he wasted days on it, right? Thinking that he was a genius, and ChatGPT was assuring him that he was going to change the world. And of course, once he finally paused to think about what was going on, he asked Gemini, "Hey, can you check on this that ChatGPT is telling me?" And Gemini was like, "No, this is crazy. Like, none of this makes sense," right? But that was a waste of hours and hours of that guy's time and his mental health as well, right? Thinking that he stumbled upon this amazing scientific
Yeah.
mathematical discovery. And so things like that, when you don't realize that ChatGPT may be hallucinating or may not be giving you the best answers because maybe you also didn't prompt it correctly from the beginning, they can actually be a huge drain on people's times and energy.
Yeah. And another less harrowing and more, just cheeky version of that. A friend of mine, Logan Freeman, who was on our first podcast actually that we did, he was running a test, and he knew that ChatGPT utilized Unicode's emoji library, right? So he
Hmm.
asked it for an emoji of a seahorse, and it gave him an emoji of a horse, and then was like, "Wait, that's not right." And it kind of like ran through just giving a bunch of different emojis and saying like, "Here's an emoji of a seahorse," and it's not a seahorse.
Not.
And then going down the list, and then eventually it was like, you know what, I can't do this. And it tried to create just an ASCII art of a seahorse, and that didn't work either. But it very confidently said, "Here's your seahorse," and it was not a seahorse. So I think that that's one area that, yeah, it can cause people more work, especially if it's not obvious to the at face value, like that example is. um, if it's something that, yeah, like here's a new math proof that nobody has figured out, and you think, man, this is amazing, like I've got to run with this, and then 3 days later you're like, I can't reproduce that, I can't, create that doesn't actually work. Yeah,
Right.
that definitely is an area where, like with anything in life, double check your work, right? They used to tell us that in math class, right?
Right.
And all of that. And I don't think many of us actually did double check our work, but it's something that we should do, especially when it's coming from AI that can hallucinate.
And
Um,
to be fair, I think that's where our AI systems are failing us right now, right? The fact that it always will give you such a confident answer, even if it's totally and verifiably wrong, it just shouldn't work like that, right? ChatGPT should be able to tell you, "Hey, I'm sorry, I don't have enough information about this." But instead, it aims to please, right? And so it's always going to give you an answer, regardless if it's false. And that's a really big area of improvement, I think, for these AI systems, and a huge opportunity area as well for OpenAI and Google and all these other companies. I think the company that can get there first will gain a lot of trust from consumers simply by having their systems to be able to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I actually don't know enough about this to tell you." So,
Yeah, and I think there's a way for them to intelligently do that. If they don't have access or they don't have the knowledge, request it, right? Say like, do you have additional, documentation you can upload or whatever it would be, or just simply being able to say, like you said, like I don't have the knowledge base to provide an answer here. I think that that would build a lot of trust with the consumer, certainly more than what we have now with spitting out incorrect emojis and things along those lines. And
Yeah.
that kind of ties into my next question as well, which is, what skills become more valuable as AI becomes more common? And one of those obviously is that ability to kind of double check your work and make sure that that everything is actually correct and not just have implicit trust in a system that has some flaws currently. But what other skills do you think become more valuable?
I get this question a lot, especially from parents and from parents that have kids, especially parents that have kids going to college, right? Like, what should I be telling my kid to study? Like, what skills should they be concentrating on? Will their degree that they're trying to get even exist in, a few years from now? And what I always tell, especially parents and kids as well, is to really focus on those people skills, right? It is so AI is not going to be able to replace you and I here having an actual human conversation, right? Maybe, it can like generate podcasts and things like that, but it is not actually going to be able to go out and understand what is going on in the market, right? What is going on with your clients, your consumers, your family, right? And so I truly believe that the number one skill that people can work on is communications and storytelling. Because as you know, if you can tell a good story, you can sell anything, right? And that is something that AI is just simply not going to be able to replace. That human to human trust is still going to be needed now and in the future. And so concentrating on those human connection skills, the storytelling, the closeness, warmth that you can have with other humans, that is what's really going to differentiate us and continue to differentiate us from the machine systems that are hopefully going to be doing the busy work for us, right? So that we can actually do the high value work of creating the human connections.
That's a absolutely fantastic point there, and something that I really take to heart throughout my career is that ability to kind of tell a story, right? And something just anecdotally, I've been successful in my career, but I'm not any more intelligent or accomplished than a lot of people out there. I have, some great things I've done under my belt and, things along those lines, but I think what makes that most impactful is I'm able to relate those and tell the story behind it and make that human connection beyond just kind of talking about stats and data. And I think that that is something that, those soft skills, as people would call them, which I don't necessarily consider, soft versus hard or anything like that.
I
But
agree.
I, I think that those are skills that are going to be incredibly important in the advent of the AI era, right? Is that ability to make human connections, that ability to tell a story, that ability to relate back your accomplishments to, whatever topic you're talking about and kind of get the value across to the audience. I think that's going to be incredibly important for people as they grow in their career, especially now, more so than people at the tail end of their career.
Yeah, and if you want, we can kind of look at it into, as you mentioned, like soft skills or hard skills, right? So on the soft skills side, it's definitely that human connection, the storytelling, the communication skills. But then if you're looking at more specific, tangible things, then I would say just really understand how to use AI, right? It really goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning with the training, really concentrate on going beyond those vague prompts on ChatGPT and understanding how these systems work and how you can get the most out of them. If you can combine that with your people skills, your soft skills, right, as we mentioned, then you really have a superpower to be able to accomplish any job or to succeed in your career.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's when you talk about the kind of parents asking about what their kids should study, going to college, and things like that. I think that, subject matter that you study, there's a million different ways that you can be successful in life. There's, I started in college doing finance and accounting, and I got about a year into it and was like, I don't ever want to think about this ever again. This isn't for me,
Right.
But a lot of those, kind of skills that you talked about really transfer, right? So I think it's less about what path you want to take. I think that passion can still kind of drive that aspect of it, but definitely how you learn and how you communicate are going to be very big.
As we know, and probably a lot of your listeners have experience with this, many people
Mhm.
will go to college and get a degree and then work in a completely different field, right? And that happens very, very often. And so it's really about, learning everything that you have to learn in college, of course, and the courses and the course material, but utilizing those 4 years of college to, again, build on those human skills, right? Make those connections. Really, the highest value that you can get out of college is the network that you make, right? And so that's really usually what I tell parents. Don't worry so much about what the actual degree is, but encourage your kid to really get out there, meet people, get out of the house, develop their skills, and they'll be successful regardless of what degree they end up getting in the end.
Tying back into the work you do with Elevate AI Consulting, um, what's something that businesses should focus on before they jump into adopting AI?
Absolutely, right? And so one of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing companies make is trying to automate processes without first reviewing if they actually make sense. And what we see is that automating a bad process, all that does is ensure that you get bad results more often and more efficiently, right? And so with that, reviewing processes and making sure that they actually make sense to exist before attempting to apply an automation to them is how businesses are actually able to truly become more efficient and see ROI from their AI initiatives. It is not just automating things just because, it is automating things that actually make sense to automate and then completely changing or eliminating processes that no longer need to exist.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I do have one more question for you. So to
Sure.
wrap it up, if we record this episode again 2 years from now, what do you think that we went over today would sound outdated?
I do think that over time, the need for this intense training that we talked about in the beginning will reduce. I think people will still need to know how to use AI really well. However, the focus that we have right now on prompting and prompting things the correct way, maybe won't be as necessary anymore, right? And I do think 2 years from now, we may look back and laugh at the vague questions that we were asking ChatGPT, and all the hundreds of times that we asked it to help us refine an email, and just think, those guys had no idea what they were doing back then. That was really just scratching the surface. And 2 years from now, I do think that a lot more people are going to consider themselves creators and developers, maybe without even realizing, right? Because the power to build with AI is really out there, and more people are finding out the capabilities.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm sure that half of what we talked about today, people, in 2 years will be like, oh, that's baked into this. That's already, part of XYZ. Like, what are they talking about having to do it manually? Because that
Right.
kind of growth in agents and the growth in kind of building that into all the tech out there is well underway. So thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. Before we close out, I like to give guests, the chance to kind of plug their socials, anything they're working on. Um, where can people find you?
Absolutely. So you can find us at Elevate AI Consulting on all the major platforms. So LinkedIn, Instagram, our YouTube channel as well. I just posted a masterclass on AI search and AEO optimization that your listeners might be interested in finding out more. And we're always posting educational content. I have posted some of the sessions from my bootcamp as well. So if you're interested in AI education or automations, please make sure to find us at Elevate AI Consulting on all the major platforms.
Thank you so much. So for all of our listeners, if you like this episode, I always hate saying this, but make sure to hit follow, leave a review, leave a comment. Tell us what you want us to talk about next. We're always looking for cool, exciting topics, and we want to talk about things that our community wants to hear. So, thank you so much, Tiago. I really appreciate it. Have fun down at Miami Beach. I hope it's a little too cold lately, but it seems to be heating up today. So maybe it is time to go to the beach today. But I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And for all of our listeners, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.